Hello and welcome. This is another video, which is going to be about creating a time clock using Google Docs, Google Forms, G Suite, in other words. And we're going to talk about how to create that time clock, how to deploy a time clock, how to use the time clock to actually generate timesheets, how to do automatic hours calculation, and quite a few other things on top of that. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it here. And I'm going to show you a few things that I have created just to get us started. So the first thing I have here is a blank, not a blank, but a new Google Forms that I've titled here, as you can see, Employee Time Clock. And I have a little description here, signing out from work at the end of the day or for lunch and breaks. And then as a demo, I've added a couple of people here that I'll call person 1, person 2, and person 3. This specific option right here is a drop-down menu. So the way it will look if we click on the preview here is it'll look like this. This is what a user would see. So if you click on this drop-down, you'll see these names here. And that's kind of what we want. You know, we want people to select their names from a list. It's definitely true that that presents a few challenges when it comes to form security. I do have a couple of solutions to go with that, but we'll talk about those a bit later. After you have this option here for picking your person, then you can actually select in or out. And I do have this as radio button. It prevents any possibility of selecting both of these or something like that. Now, just like with any time clock system, this system is susceptible to garbage data. So it is important that whatever you put into it is good data if you want to get good data out of it, otherwise known as garbage in, garbage out. So it's always important to remember that there is a human element to anything like this. And with that under consideration, let's talk about the next steps in this process. So I'm going to close the preview mode here. And we're going to look back at the editing screen. So like I said, what I've done is I've added a title, I've added a drop-down menu question, and a radio button question. Now you could even add other things in here if you want, and we'll talk more about how you can manipulate the data later. But you could, for example, put in here that you're clocking out for lunch or something if you wanted to really differentiate those times. And that would present you with a lot of opportunities for later. But like I said, this is going to be a very brief and basic overview of what I would consider the 3 steps in this process. So step number 1, like I said, create that Google form. Once you've created the Google form, and you have this item here, you're going to go on the Responses tab, and you want to select your Responses destination. If you click on this button under Responses, it'll actually let you designate a sheet to make your data's destination. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but you can see I already have a lot of data in here. So what I did was I actually already created this sheet, and I simulated a bunch of time clock data so that I can show you what to do with it. So by clicking this, you can actually create a brand new sheet. And let's just pretend as if I'm doing that for the first time. So the first thing I did was, if you go to View on this sheet and you go to Freeze, you can say 1 row, and that'll add this row here as a frozen row. So you can see as you scroll, it actually locks that first row in place, so you can see what the column header is without having to do that. Now, these column headers are inserted automatically by Google. And what you can do with this is the timestamps actually gathered by the system, which is the entire point behind this project, is that because it's gathered by the system, it takes the human element out of time recording. It actually records it down to the second. But you can see here that it's got the name of the person recorded, whether they're clocking in or out, and then the time, date and time down to the second. Now again, I've simulated some data here so that we can take a look at what to do with it. So let's say that you have this in deployment here for a couple of weeks, and you've been gathering this data, and we'll go ahead and close the form because we don't need it right this moment, but you have this as your raw data. So the question is, what exactly can you do with this? For starters, you can see individual time clocks. Now, you may notice that this is sorted by date at the moment. So it's sorted by date and then by time. However, we're going to use something in Sheets called sort range, and we're going to make this look a lot better than it does now. For starters, you're going to click up here at the top left corner of the cells, and you're going to go Data, Sort Range. Now, you do want to check the header row box, and we're going to start by sorting by name, and then we're going to sort by clocking in or out. in that order, and you're going to see what it looks like here. So if you go sort, you can see that it puts all of the person ones at the top like this. And then after it puts all the person ones at the top, it then puts their ins first and then their outs. Okay, so what can we do with this exactly? For starters, I'm going to show you how to make this look a little nicer. And let's start with some conditional formatting. So once you resort this, it can redo the formatting very easily. So I'm going to just highlight all of column C. I'm going to go Format, and we're going to do conditional formatting. And so let's do here that in cells C1 through C177, and you can extend that for as long as you need to. You can say text, let's see here, let's do text contains, and you can add the word in, and we'll set it to green. And then what we'll do is do another rule, and we'll do text contains, and we'll add the value here out, and we're going to change the color to red. So you can see that differentiates that pretty good. What it does is it helps you break up these sections. So as you scroll, what you'll see is a whole bunch of clock ins and then a bunch of clock outs for the same person. Now, right off the bat, this isn't terrible, but it's also not great. I mean, this doesn't really help you. Let's say you have 50 employees that are using this. How is what you're doing here going to help in any way with keeping track of those employees' time? So there is a way to take it to the next level. So let's talk about what to do next. Now, you want to keep this raw data, and it's very important that you try not to manipulate anything on this screen aside from conditional formatting, because you might break the data insertion that comes from the Google form. But what I would encourage you to do is to create a brand new sheet, which I have done, and I'm going to call this Pay Calculator. Now, this is really simple. All it is a set of cells where I've built some formulas and then rules, and I'm going to put in some additional color coding as well. So let me show you what this all looks like. For starters, in these columns here, you can see that the formula for each column is as follows. So if I click up in the modification cell, you can see that it's actually B2 minus A2. So the great part about it is that it'll actually recognize and drop the date data from the calculations. Let me actually just show you what I mean. So let's say we were going to calculate the pay period and pay sheet for person one, right? So the first thing we'd want to do is take all of their in times like this, and you're going to copy them, and you're going to come back and paste. Okay. Now you'll see that this fills in, but you're going to ignore it for now because you don't have an end time yet. Now you need to take person one's out times, and you copy those, and you paste them here. Now what you get is you get the daily, or excuse me, it's really more the hours per in-out period. In some cases, it may be an entire day, but you can see here that person one clocked in at 6:52 a.m. and they clocked out at 16:02 at 42 seconds military time. So 6:02 p.m. I'm sorry, 4:02 p.m. Excuse me. That's a total of 9 hours and 10 minutes. It does drop the seconds on that, so it just rounds it to the nearest minute, which I found was probably mostly helpful. Now, the best part about all this is that what you can do is take this data and then reinsert it to a total hours field. And you'll see that I've got some here of C2 through C25. So it's every field from here to here. And it also rounds to the nearest minute. So the total for this timesheet for person one is 86 hours, 24 minutes. Now, what you would do at this point is you could just say print, and you could print this sheet, and then have the supervisor sign it, have the employees sign it, and then you could submit it for payment. You could have contractors check in this way if you wanted to, and they could just use their name, they could use a special code, anything you'd like to do for that. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that printing there. But let's take it even a little bit further. Let's say that for validation reasons, we want to do some conditional formatting. And let's do some time here. Let's do greater than. Let's do greater than. And what we can do is insert 8 hours here. And we'll actually change that to red. And then we'll hit done, and we'll hit another rule. And we'll do is let's do less than or equal to 7 hours and 59 minutes. Hit OK. Less than or equal to, and we'll say add another rule. And yeah, actually, you know, we're just going to cancel that for now. So it is highlighting the zeros, obviously, because they do fall under that rule of being less than or equal to 7 hours and 59 minutes. Now, one tiny editing quirk that you'll notice is that it does say that it's equal to an actual time of day. I haven't found any negative repercussions from that yet, but it does see it as a time of day. So you could put it as, for example, 1400. And if it were 14 hours, you know, it just thinks it's 1400 p.m. or something. So it would be like 2 p.m., 1400 hours, right? It's not really too big of a deal, like I said. But if anybody finds any issues with that configuration, please let me know in a comment or something so that I can alter my approach. The other thing I'm going to do with this text is I'm actually just going to go ahead and format it as bold so that it's a little easier to see. And then down here, let's say you're doing a 2-week pay period and you have employees that are, you know, working a solid 40 hours, or you have a very strict overtime approval policy, something like that. What you could do is if you highlight this field, you can, I'm going to delete that one. We'll add another rule. So for F26, which is this field right here, what you could do is you could say if it's greater than or equal to, and we'll just do 80 hours, or I'm sorry, 80 hours and 1 minute, right? And what we'll do is we'll highlight it in red. Okay, and you'll see that it stays red here because it is greater than 80 hours. So, for example, this might be a way for you to identify employees who might be working more than their allotted number of hours without overtime approval, something like that. That would be an easy way to flag that, where when it comes up highlighted red, it's like a reminder for you to discuss it with that employee or to submit that for approval or whatever it is that you need to do. So, we've been using this for quite some time now, to great effect, I would say. And one of the things that's important to remember is that anywhere you have a formula like this, you have the capability to break your entire form. So as such, I think it's an important lesson here that anywhere you have a formula, what you're going to want to do with that is use protected sheets and ranges. So I'm going to start by highlighting everything where I have a formula. And let's see if I can, yeah, I can also highlight these. So you can highlight this entire column, or the column where there's formulas, and then highlight this total hours calculation as well. And then if you go to data, you can go to protected sheets and ranges. You can go add a sheet or range. And I'm going to go and highlight this. And if you hit set permissions, actually, I'm going to go back for a second. Add sheet or range. Okay, so C2 to C25. All right, so we're going to go set permissions. And I'm going to remove, and then I'll show you what that looks like here really quick. So like, let's say I go to delete this. It gives you a heads up. And it says heads up, you're trying to edit part of the sheet, shouldn't be changed. Accidentally, edit anyway. The cool thing about this is you can turn it off for 5 minutes. So if you know you're doing some editing on these ranges, it allows you to prevent having to click OK for quite some time. But the cool part about that is if you do try to edit something and you accidentally delete it, it'll yell at you before it actually lets you do it. So I'm going to hit cancel because I do not want to delete that. But here's the best part. Once this is done and you've got all this conditional formatting, if I go print, I can send this form to the printer. I can have an employee sign here, a supervisor sign here. And once they do that, then you just go back to the form and you just hit the backspace key and it zeroes out all of the data that's in those fields. And then, for example, you just come here to person 2 and you do theirs. Now, I did the time on this this morning, doing 1 employee's worth for a pay period for approximately 2 weeks worth of work. 1 employee took me about 56 seconds to do this all correctly, but you can see the formatting here is in play. Anything over 8 hours is coming up red. This, for some reason, is not over 80, but is still showing as red, and I'm I'm going to have to check my formatting rules here. So let's go to Format, Conditional Formatting. So F26. Oh, so it looks like I have some older ranges in there that I didn't really want. So greater than or equal to. Okay, so add another rule. What we'll do is we're going to go to less than or equal to 80 hours. And we'll leave it green. Right, so it's going to come up green when it's less than 80. It's also going to come up red when it's greater than 80, as you can see by these two conditional format rules here. So the great part about this is that I'm essentially taking data that's created by the system when you use that Google form, because the system records the time down to the second. So I'm taking that data that's created by the system and I'm using it to turn it into an easy calculation for hours. And again, this morning, it took me approximately 56 seconds. You know, that would be if you have 50 employees that you have to do this for, that's approximately 50 minutes every 2 weeks. You know, that's really not a huge time commitment, especially if you are doing some kind of time management of other kinds. There's going to be a time commitment there as well. The best part about this solution, without a doubt, is the fact that it's free. I was able to create this solution in an afternoon. It really is not particularly difficult, and the best part is there's a lot more you can do with it that I haven't done. You can add extra formatting. You can actually tools here and add scripts. And one of the things I'm considering doing for the future with forms like this and projects like this is actually using scripts to direct export the data. So for what you could do is every 2 weeks, for example, it would send the data for just specific employees and direct insert it into this form automatically, and then send the completed form on to whoever the supervisor of that employee is, something along those lines. It's a pretty straightforward approach, an easy way to generate a time clock, especially if you're a smaller business who maybe doesn't have the budget for a professional time clock system. Like I said, it does require a little bit more management on that case, but again, we're talking about approximately 50 minutes to an hour every 2 weeks just for generating the timesheets, which really isn't particularly difficult. And like I said, the best part about this is you do not have to do any manual time entry. The time entry is done by the system, and you just copy and paste it into the calculator and then print off the sheet. So it's not difficult at all, and it really is an easy solution that allows a lot of flexibility for the future. You can add additional employees, and we'll actually go back to that and I'll show you. So if you go back to the time clock, when you go to edit here, you can add additional options, as you can see. And then as those new people enter their name, they'll just show up here in the list. So you'll just see person 3, you'll have person 4, person 5, and so on, and so on, and so on. So that pretty much concludes this lesson. I hope this has been helpful and has hopefully taught you something that you didn't know, or a way that you can use Google Sheets and Google Forms to help out your business or help out your company in a way that you've been trying to fix. Again, this has been the Tech Journeyman. I'm really excited about using, so I'm hoping to post more videos as soon as I can. So stay tuned for that information, and we will see everybody next time.